I am ready when you all are.
Okay, we have the impact of inefficient healthcare in Haiti by Sydney, Mallory, Vince, and Caitlin.
So our thesis question is, how does the ineffectiveness of the current healthcare system in Haiti negatively affect the lives of the citizens? And here we have a little visual with some just general statistics about the healthcare system, if you want to look at that. It'll just give you an idea about the current status of like where they're at, what they're struggling with.
Some of the backgrounds of the problem on mental health was culture, education, and resources. Found on NJ.gov's presentation on culture and clinical care for Haitians, which is reliable sources done by government-level researchers. Culture includes tradition. They were really into spiritual stuff and voodoo. They do black magic, and they mostly focus on practitioners to heal their mental illnesses instead of doctors. And stated by Garner Lawrence in a paper, he's credible because he graduated from McGill University and is a transcultural psychiatric, and he stated only 72% of the population in Haiti has attended primary school, and then only 1% has a university level education, and then most of them are unable to read. And then resources, he also stated how the resources are very scarce and they don't have the necessities they need for the hospitals and different necessary resources.
So for political issues, we've got poverty, corruption, and gangs, backed up by findings from Fenda Felba Brown, a news reporter for the news site Brookings. She found that they are dealing with cholera, fuel shortages, among other problems, which is caused by gangs controlling most of day-to-day life, sieges, gang warfare, and you've got poverty, which also plays into this by preventing people from being able to pay the payments, and also leading to the last point, corruption, where the Haitian National Police and gangs work together to allow this to keep happening.
So I have the futuristic lens, which I talked about in my paper. So the three main points that I discussed and researched were quality of care, natural disasters impacting healthcare, and financial aid. So firstly, according to Leah Lasonsky, an associate professor of emergency medicine and anesthesiology, the healthcare systems in place are always changing due to natural disaster and economics, which is why it's hard for the healthcare systems to keep up. Only a minority of citizens have access to good quality care facilities. The absence of affordable quality care directly affects Haitian citizens, and it contributes to the higher mortality rates compared to other neighboring countries. Haiti has suffered many challenges over the years that have had an impact on medical infrastructure. One of these in particular is the earthquake that occurred in 2010. Natural disasters are very prevalent in Haiti because they're prone to them because of the deforestation that has occurred throughout the country. So, the earthquake that happened in 2010 contributed to the destroying over 50 healthcare facilities, and this led to a lack of psychiatric services for Haitians. Access to healthcare for Haitians is affected by the lack of financial aid services provided by the country. International aid has already been proven to be helpful with the rebuilding of the facilities after the earthquake, but Haiti will need support when it comes to rebuilding its current healthcare system in the future.
Another problem that we have is economic. Haiti lacks funding for things like hospitals, doctors, nurses, and healthcare. Without funding from Haiti's government, it's hard for them to afford things like building new hospitals with beds and vaccines, and be able to afford to pay all the nurses or the doctors that work there. The National Library of Medicine, a government-run website, states that there's only 1.8 nurses for every 10,000 people in Haiti, and this cannot provide the services that they need. The World Bank organization that is ran to help with poverty all over the world states that at $13 per capita a year, public spending on health is below average for low-income countries in Haiti compared to other countries who spend thousands of dollars yearly per person on health care.
Okay, so our first solution is restructure of the government, and some of the limitations include foreign intervention, insured structure, and corrupt individuals taking power over again. So for the first one, foreign intervention, this means that another nation can come in and try to redo their government and help them redo it since it's corrupt. But if they didn't want help, then they wouldn't allow it, so it would be kind of hard. And then the second is they have to have insured structure or else it won't work and it would fail if they weren't secured. And then the corrupt individuals could get power back if they're already in that place of having power. And then some of our pros and cons. Pros are removing the corrupt politicians, which would be very useful since the government is so corrupt. And then another pro is there would be change in the government throughout, which would help the restructure of the government. And then our cons include the corruption could take back over again by the individual who was leading, and it could lead to things like wars and fights.
All right, so we must apply that the volunteers, again, that means that if they do not volunteer, it is an all-out war, deal with guerrilla fighting. You can see this in examples like East Germany, right, when the Soviet Union took it over in the late 50s and when they revolted in the late 80s. And then one nation must take responsibility for this project, which also means that you have to choose who's going to do this. And when you do that, you're going to put a lot of pressure on that one country to prevail. And it's going to be a dumpster fire. Just put that out there. So.
Okay, so our solution 2 is to incentivize the spread of business. This would be done through law enforcement that would focus on removing the incentives for corruption, because right now the gangs, they get away with doing whatever they want to do, and this negatively affects the healthcare system. So with this solution, business would be able to grow, and as a result, we would hope that the economy would be able to grow, and that would majorly impact the healthcare system, because we know that government funding is the main issue behind why the healthcare systems are not able to afford quality care for all Haitians. So the limitations include government officials. They could try to bar this passing or interfere with the enforcement if they're corrupt. Gangs, this is a big problem because gangs have already taken over day-to-day life and they kind of control businesses. So that would be a problem because we're trying to spread business. Poverty, that kind of repels foreign investment for other nations when looking at Haiti, when seeing the level of poverty they're in. I guess they wouldn't really want to help them because they're so far gone already. And then natural disasters, they have destroyed lots of land and infrastructure, which doesn't help anything. And then the pros of the solution are that it allows for the growth of big businesses and the society, and there's increased pay for Haitian workers, so maybe they would be able to afford the health care. And there's also better threat prevention. But the cons are that gangs could interfere with this process, like I said earlier. They control day-to-day life, and it does not directly solve the underlying issues with the healthcare crisis. So it might just benefit big corporations and businesses instead of the local society.
Some implications are public spending, product creation, and good public relations. If we implemented this solution, more money would be spent in places that it's needed, like funding for hospitals and nurses. The products needed in hospitals, like vaccines, beds, and nurses, would be more likely to be received.
So, in conclusion, we talked about restructuring the government and incentivizing the spread of business. Either or, something needs to change. Otherwise, Haiti will not become any better and it will stay the way that it is, and things will not turn out very well. That is it.
All right, thanks. All right, let's do the oral defense questions, and y'all can clap. Vince,
Yes?
what is an example of a compelling argument from one of your peers' individual reports that you decided to exclude from the team presentation, and why?
A compelling argument that we refused to include was Mallory's argument about mental health. It's not as big of an issue when it comes to health in the way that we're looking at it, which is coming from the mortality and being able to work. it does, well, yes, mental health works with conditions. It's not at the point to where it's creating a massive struggle in the nation to be able to increase their GDP and pull them out of where they are.
Okay. All right, Sydney, describe an argument from one of your peers' individual reports that made you think differently about the team's solution or conclusion.
I would say Vince's argument made me think differently the most because during my research, I mostly researched about the current state of Haiti's healthcare and what improvements would need to be done in the future so that their society could survive. And Vince focused on, he had the political lens, and he focused on gang violence, corruption in the government, and things like that. And so that changed my understanding of the whole project because, well, I thought it couldn't get any worse, and then it did once I was reading his paper. And so I think it definitely changed the way I was thinking about our solutions. I thought some minor improvements would need to be made, but then we decided that we would need to restructure the whole government. So his paper definitely made me think differently about our research.
All right. Kaylin, what is a way in which your team's resolution makes you think differently about your own individual research?
A way that our team's resolution makes me think differently about my own research is that I had the mental health lens, so it focused more on like the mental aspects, and our resolution mostly was about the government, and so it made me realize that the more corruption stuff was the biggest issue in the cause to the Haitians not being able to get the resources they need and the proper equipment and everything for the hospitals.
All right. Mallory, how did the group decide to include Sydney's perspective into the overall presentation?
We decided to include Sydney. She had futuristic. So we looked at what would happen in Haiti if we didn't solve the problem and what it would be like in the future if we didn't restructure the government and find new ways for the healthcare to improve.
All right. Thank you, guys.